The top story this Wednesday, viewers, now as the West Asia war keeps on simmering. Here are 20 simulations, that's correct, we've fleshed out 20 simulations of the possible worst-case scenarios. It's a look at how fast, if indeed, things could unravel in the West Asia. On your screens right now, first up, the first scenario we fleshed out for you. What if Israel launches a second wave on Iran's nuclear Fordow site? Now, not only will this lead to contamination in the area, but also an all-out nuclear escalation between the two warring sides. Now, on to the second scenario that we fleshed out from you. Iran fires ballistic missiles at Tel Aviv. Now, this will ignite fears of an all-out war again across West Asia if that comes to fruition, viewers. Now, the third scenario we have mapped out for you here. What happens if Hezbollah opens a full front in North Israel? We already know Israel has been and currently is also fighting a multi-front war. This will essentially open another front, which the Israeli Defense Forces will virtually have to protect. Moving on to the fourth scenario that we fleshed out for you. Israel bombs IRGC bases in Damascus. Now, well, if this happens, Syria will in fact also be pulled in to the conflict, expanding the battlefield beyond just Iran and Israel. Over to the fifth scenario now. US Navy destroys Iranian radars in Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz, if US Navy takes out key Iranian radar systems, asserting dominance in the Gulf. And who will do that? The US Navy's CENTCOM is in charge of missions in the Middle East. On to the next scenario, the scenario number 6. Iran attacks US bases in UAE and Iraq. A no-brainer here. If Iran does so, not only will the US, but other Middle Eastern countries will also be dragged into this conflict further and further, only exaggerating it. On to the next scenario now we have fleshed out for you. Saudi and Emirati defense systems go active. In case of this happening, you have to prepare for incoming fire, not only from Israel, but also from the United States. The next scenario we have for you up on our screens right now. If Israel strikes Iranian missile silos with F-35. Remember, these F-35s made in the US also need US permission to engage these fighter jets, the 5th-gen fighter jets, in combat. And it'll be a preemptive limit to the retaliation, in fact. The next escalation scenario. Now, what happens if China moves warships into the Strait of Hormuz? As I pointed out earlier, the CENTCOM, the US CENTCOM fleet, is responsible for the Middle East. Now, if this happens, if China were to in fact move warships into the Strait of Hormuz, it would lead to a direct conflict between Washington and Beijing. On to our 10th scenario now. From China, we move to Russia. Russia threatens NATO if intervention escalates. We've all seen the close relationship that Moscow and Tehran share. In fact, Moscow has been using Iranian drones to target Ukraine and considers Iran one of its closest strategic allies. On to the 11th scenario we fleshed out for you. Iran launches massive drone swarms on Israeli airfields. Now, Israel has, or so it claims, to have neutralized around 1/3 or more than 60% of Iran's air defenses. And in a scenario where Iran is actually able to take out some Israeli fighter jets or even damage their airfields, that will be a big problem for Israel, because right now Israel virtually controls the Iranian skies. Moving on to the 12th scenario we have for you. Israel conducts decapitation strike on Iranian leadership. Glimpses of what we've already seen. The head of the IRGC was eliminated on Friday, followed by the new IRGC chief being eliminated on Tuesday. Moving on to the 13th scenario we have for you. Iran declares national war footing and closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, this will lead to a massive economic fallout, because the Strait of Hormuz is it's a very international shipping route for international containers and, of course, for global northwest trade. Now, the 14th scenario, US launches a full-scale air campaign from aircraft carriers. Again, the CENTCOM will be very pivotal here because US has a barrage or a big amount or a large amount of fighter jets positioned in the Middle East in its CENTCOM fleet. Moving on to escalation number 15. Israel hints at nuclear options under the Samson doctrine. So this would perhaps be one of the biggest escalations where Israel announces that it is going to press the nuclear red button, and this will in fact not only escalate. Escalation 6 now is Iran test fires long-range ballistic missiles in show of strength. So we already know that Iran has claimed that its missiles can not only reach Israel but can also in fact target other European countries that are farther away, pulling European Union into the conflict as well. Escalation 17. We have for you next. Russia deploys nuclear strategic bombers to Syria. We mentioned how Syria could in fact be pulled into the war, and Syria, being a close ally of Russia, might even let Moscow and Putin deploy some of his bombers in its airfield, again leading to an all-out conflict. Scenario 18, Israel uses low-yield nuclear device on military targets in Iran. Now again, any use of a military asset or a warhead by Israel will of course escalate the conflict beyond just the region, beyond just the two countries. There's a lot of Arab countries also in the middle which will get embroiled in this conflict. Scenario 19, Iran retaliates with a dirty bomb via proxy in Tel Aviv. So after the October 7 attacks, we've been seeing how the Iranian leadership has been actively in fact sponsoring the Hezbollahs, the Houthis in Yemen, and also the Hamas in Gaza. So through one of its proxies, if it's able to smuggle a dirty bomb into Tel Aviv or Israel, that will lead to an unprecedented conflict. And finally, the 20th scenario we have for you here, global markets crash as United Nations declares a catastrophic alert. Now, this can happen in a situation where the Strait of Hormuz, as we discussed, is blocked by Iran, or there's, of course, the conflict spreads to the ocean as well. Now, this was an example of how fast actually this conflict could spiral. In fact, viewers, you should share this simulation to remind the world peace is not a choice until it's not. Now, moving on, India has never asked for and will never accept a third-party mediation to resolve the issue of Pakistan's illegal occupation of parts of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, this was the highlight of PM Narendra Modi's late Tuesday phone conversation with US President Donald Trump. In fact, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri briefed the press Wednesday morning about that 35-minute phone call which took place while Mr. Modi was actually in Canada, in fact, to attend the G7 summit. He said the topic came after Mr. Trump asked PM Modi for details, in fact, about Operation Sindoor. The PM, meanwhile, told Mr. Trump India's response had been measured and targeted only terror camps in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir as well. The PM then also underlined India's position on third-party mediation, that it is neither wanted nor needed, and that this has always been the case. Listen in.
10 मई की रात को पाकिस्तान के हमले का भारत ने बहुत सशक्त जवाब दिया और पाकिस्तान की सेना को बहुत नुकसान पहुंचाया। उसके मिलिट्री एयर बेसिस को इनऑपरेबल बना दिया। भारत के मुंहतोड़ जवाब के कारण पाकिस्तान को भारत से सैन्य कार्रवाई रोकने का आग्रह करना पड़ा। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप को स्पष्ट रूप से कहा कि इस पूरे घटनाक्रम के दौरान कभी भी किसी भी स्तर पर भारत अमेरिका ट्रेड डील या अमेरिका द्वारा भारत और पाकिस्तान के बीच मध्यस्थता जैसे विषयों पर बात नहीं हुई थी। सैन्य कार्रवाई रोकने की बात सीधे भारत और पाकिस्तान के बीच दोनों सेनाओं की एग्जिस्टिंग चैनल्स के माध्यम से हुई थी और पाकिस्तान के ही आग्रह पर हुई थी। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने जोर देकर कहा कि भारत ने न तो कभी मध्यस्थता स्वीकार की थी, न करता है और न ही कभी करेगा।
Well, that was the Foreign Secretary, Vikram Misri. My colleague, meanwhile, Shiv Arur, gets you more on the story.
This conversation is interesting on so many levels, and there's a lot to unpack when two leaders like Modi and Trump speak for 35 minutes. Imagine how long that conversation actually is. Number one, of course, the context was set. The fact that it was a phone call and not a face-to-face meeting because Trump had to abruptly leave the G7 in light of what's happening between Iran and Israel. The fact that this is the first conversation really after Operation Sindoor. The fact that Prime Minister Modi, the big takeaway, of course, is, setting the record straight, clearing any doubts about, the suggestion that there was mediation from the US president's side and that there was absolutely no talk of any trade or any deal or any bargaining chips diplomatically or otherwise during Operation Sindoor is something that the Prime Minister has cleared the decks on, settled the debate on, literally in a conversation with the man who made those claims, the US president himself. So it's very interesting, to see what the next steps in that conversation will actually be. I find it interesting that President Trump, moving away from protocol as he usually does. That is brand Trump, after all. Quipping and inviting Prime Minister Modi to stop by in the United States, on his return from the G7. Obviously, that doesn't happen on a dime. The Prime Minister of India is the Prime Minister of the world's largest democracy. He's busy. He's got a busy schedule as well. He can't suddenly divert his travel plans to stop over in the United States, no matter how important that relationship is. And it is a very important relationship, but he's got other work to do. But I think what this does really, Gauri, is set the stage for that next step. I think what the Prime Minister has done in these 35 minutes is clear the air over any lingering doubts over Trump and the United States administration's role in Operation Sindoor and how what happened was a ceasefire that was forced literally only by Indian action and not because of any external mediation. That's the big takeaway from this.
The PM Modi has sent a clear message, in fact, during his 23-hour trip to the leaders of the G7. He's hit out at support for terrorism, international support for terrorism, which is in fact coming in from countries like Turkey, as we have seen in the recent past. He's also said, going forward, terrorism is an enemy of humanity. It's one thing that India as a country has been reiterating for decades together now. He added that no country should support terrorism and also gave out a stark warning that terror support will in fact come at a price that any country is not willing to pay. Meanwhile, there were also progress made in the strained India-Canada relations at the sidelines of the G7 summit. There you see the iconic handshake between PM Modi and Canada's Mark Carney. And for reference, this was PM Modi's first visit to Canada in 10 years. That's right, after 2015. Now listen in to what both the leaders had to say.
भारत और कनाडा के संबंध अनेक प्रकार से बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है। कनाडा की अनेक कंपनियों का भारत में निवेश है। भारत के लोगों का भी कनाडा की धरती पर बहुत बड़ा निवेश है। लोकतांत्रिक मूल्यों को समर्पित कनाडा और भारत मिलकर के लोकतंत्र को मजबूत करना होगा, मानवता को मजबूत करना होगा, हमारे रिसोर्सेज का ऑप्टिमम यूटिलाइजेशन कर करके मानव जात के कल्याण के काम में कैसे ला सकते हैं, उस दिशा में हम प्रयास करते रहेंगे। और मुझे विश्वास है कि प्रधानमंत्री जी के चुनाव के बाद मुझे पहली बार मिलने का मौका मिला है, तो इस चुनाव के भव्य विजय के लिए भी मैं उनको बधाई देता हूं और आने वाले कालखंड में उनके साथ भारत और कनाडा मिलकर के अनेक क्षेत्रों में प्रगति करेंगे।
We have mutual interests in security, border security, and military security, and in commercial prosperity, and we have a variety of paths of those discussions. The Government of Canada is going to agree only to those things that are fundamentally in the interest of Canada. In many cases, there's alignment with the United States, but not all. And the discussions are continuing. They're productive discussions, but they have more to go. And as I say, they'll take all the time that's necessary, but no more.
After 2 years of diplomatic friction between India and Canada, both sides have decided now to appoint new high commissioners in each other's country. In a 40-minute long bilateral meeting that took place between Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada in Kananaskis on the sidelines of the G7 summit, this was the big decision that was made by the two sides. Prime Minister Mark Carney saying that this would form a foundation for the reset in the ties between the two countries. Prime Minister Modi also acknowledging the importance of India-Canada relationship. He said that Canadian companies had invested in India, Indians had invested in Canada, and thereby underlining the trade relationship also between the two sides. Both sides underlined democracy and democratic values as a basis of dealing with each other, as well as rules-based order. They spoke about issues like energy security, artificial intelligence and energy, apart from other bilateral issues that both sides believe would help restore a normalcy in their relationship. In Kananaskis, this is Maha Siddiqui for NDTV.